If you're hearing this again, then it was never meant to be ignored the first time, and it was never meant to be postponed the second time. Because repetition at this level is not coincidence, it is insistence. It is God allowing the message to reach you again, because your awareness is now at a point where ignoring it is no longer neutral. It becomes a decision with consequence. And that is why it feels different this time. Heavier, clearer, more direct. Because now you recognize it. God sent this again. Not to remind you, to confront you. This wasn't random. It was repetition with purpose. There are messages that pass by without impact. And then there are messages that return. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. And when something returns like this, it is not because it failed to reach you. It is because you did not respond to it. And response is what separates awareness from action. It is what separates knowing from alignment. You already heard this before. You already felt it before. You already recognized it before. But you didn't move. And now it's here again. You are chosen. There is something in your life that has been brought to your attention more than once. Something that has shown itself clearly in different ways, through different situations, through repeated patterns, through moments that felt familiar even when they should not have been. And each time you saw it, you understood it at some level. But you allowed time to pass without making the decision that matched what you saw. That is what is being addressed now. This wasn't random. It was pattern recognition. God does not repeat without reason. And when something is repeated, it is because the lesson attached to it has not been completed, because the action required has not been taken, because the alignment expected has not been made. And until that happens, the message will continue to return in different forms until you respond. You are not being shown something new. You are being shown something again. And again changes the expectation. You weren't rejected. You were reminded. But now, reminder turns into urgency. Because repeated awareness without action creates delay, and delay keeps you in a position that no longer matches where you are meant to be. And that is why this moment feels more direct, more focused, more unavoidable. Because this is no longer about seeing, it is about responding. This wasn't random. It was escalation. You already know what this is about. You don't need it explained. You don't need it broken down. You don't need more time to think, because you've had time. You've had multiple moments. You've had repeated signals, and each one pointed to the same thing. That clarity is not new. It is repeated. You are chosen. There is a difference between missing something and ignoring something, and you are no longer in a position where you can say you missed it, because it has been placed in front of you more than once. It has been made clear in ways that cannot be dismissed as coincidence. And that means what happens next depends entirely on whether you choose to act or continue to delay. This wasn't random. It was decision point. There is also a weight that comes with repeated messages, because the more something is shown to you, the less room there is for hesitation, the less space there is for uncertainty, the more responsibility you carry to move in alignment with what you already know. And that is why this moment feels different from the last ones, because now the responsibility is clear. You know? And knowing requires movement. You weren't rejected. You were given another chance. But another chance is not endless. It is precise. It exists within a window. And that window is open right now. This wasn't random. It was timing again. You are not being asked to understand more. You are being asked to act on what you already understand. You are not being asked to wait. You are being asked to move. You are not being asked to question. You are being asked to decide. Because everything has already been shown. And repetition removes excuses. You are chosen. This is the moment where the pattern either ends or continues, where the cycle either closes or repeats again. And that outcome is not determined by what you see. It is determined by what you do. Because seeing without action changes nothing. But seeing with action changes everything immediately. You are not lacking clarity. You are being called to respond to it. This wasn't random. It was final warning. Not in fear, in precision. Because what is meant for you cannot align while you continue to ignore what has been clearly revealed. And until that shift happens, everything else remains in position, waiting for you to make the move that completes the cycle. You already know what that move is. And now, you either make it or you repeat it. And if you feel the weight of this moment more strongly than before, it is because repetition has now turned into accountability. Because what once could be overlooked as uncertainty can no longer be dismissed. What once felt like a suggestion now stands as a clear direction. And what once allowed hesitation has now removed it, leaving you with a decision that reflects not what you think, but what you are willing to do with what you already know. This wasn't random. It was accountability becoming real. You have reached the point where continuing the same pattern is no longer neutral. It is no longer something that simply repeats without consequence. It begins to shape your direction in a way that moves you further away from what has already been aligned for you. And that is why this moment carries urgency. Not because something new has appeared, but because what has already appeared has been seen too many times to ignore without effect. You are no longer in a phase of discovery. You are in a phase of decision. You are chosen. There is also something important about the number of times this has reached you, because repetition is not just about emphasis, it is about confirmation that what you are seeing is not random, that it is consistent, that it carries meaning beyond a single moment, and that consistency removes doubt. It removes the ability to question whether it is real, because what repeats with clarity is not coincidence. It is direction being reinforced. And now, direction requires movement. This wasn't random. It was confirmation through repetition. You may notice that your resistance feels different this time. Not stronger, but more visible, more obvious, easier to recognize, because now you can see exactly where you hesitate, exactly where you delay, exactly where you try to hold on to something that you already understand no longer aligns. And that visibility is not there to make things harder, it is there to make the decision clearer. Because once resistance is visible, it loses its control. You weren't rejected, you were exposed to your own hesitation. And that exposure is what allows you to move beyond it. This wasn't random. It was clarity of your own position. There is also a shift in how you interpret what happens if you continue to ignore this. Because before it may have felt like nothing would change, like things would simply continue as they are. But now you understand that continuing the same pattern does not maintain your position. It gradually moves you away from alignment. It creates distance from what has already been prepared. And that distance is not immediate, but it is real. And once you see that, ignoring becomes a choice with direction. You are chosen. There is no longer a need to wait for a stronger sign. No need to wait for something to break completely. No need to wait for discomfort to increase. Because waiting for those things is a way of avoiding the responsibility of acting when clarity is already present. And you are beyond that point now. You have already seen enough. You have already understood enough. You have already been shown enough. Now it is about movement. This wasn't random. It was completion waiting on you. There is a cycle that has repeated in your life more than once. A pattern that has shown itself in different forms but carried the same core, the same lesson, the same requirement for change. And that cycle does not end through awareness alone. It ends through action, through a decision that breaks the pattern instead of continuing it. And that decision is now in front of you. You already recognize the pattern. You already understand the lesson. What remains is the action that closes it. You weren't rejected. You were given control over the outcome. And control requires use. This wasn't random. It was the closing point. You are not waiting for something external to change. You are the one who changes it. And once you move, the pattern ends. Once you act, the repetition stops. Once you align, everything else begins to follow. Because the cycle was never about the situation. It was about your response to it. You are chosen. And chosen does not stay in repetition once clarity has been reached. Chosen ends it. Now, not later. Not eventually. Now,